Happiness is not about having no problems. Happiness is about choosing the set of problems you want to have. When we find our happiness may involve action that is exterior to ourselves.
How do you find dharma?
What are the things that make me happy? And how can I do them in such a way that it enriches the world around me? And that radiation of positivity into the world around you reflects back to you.
We just continue to add to new apps and new tools on our screen. What is this organization called the Sukha Company?
These productivity tools, the task managers, to-do lists, they are procrastination apps. You don't need 17 different ways of making Kanban boards. Anyone who has to work on their computer and has experienced the feeling of, I feel isolated, or I don't feel motivated, I feel disconnected, we built this for them. I think what the company is about, it's about self-fulfillment, it's about happiness. That is indescribable. And that's what we do. We're helping people understand their burnout, their stress, and then how to solve it. I'll be honest, there is a certain amount of pressure in life that helps propel you forward. If you just sat on the sofa all day with $1 billion in the bank, no goals, you wouldn't be happy.
What do you think is the connection between distractions and productivity?
I think there's that great Michael Jordan quote where he says, when I'm in that state, or I'm in the zone, there is nothing but me and the ball. If you've ever had that experience of looking up after 2 or 3 hours and saying, wow, I did my entire day's worth of work in these 2 or 3 hours. It is that state when you just stop looking at the clock. You stop going, how many minutes until lunch, or how many minutes until my next meeting? Fundamentally, you are stronger than you think. You decide every day with every action how strong you are. No one else tells you.
Hey, Steven, how are you doing? Such a pleasure having you here.
It is very nice to be here, and appreciate Rajesh introducing us.
Pleasure is all mine. And I was wondering if I should be calling you Mr. Puri. It sounds very Indian. Should I be calling you Steven? That sounds very American. And there I was confused totally.
Let me help you with that. Okay.
Yeah.
So my background is my father was born in Multan.
Yeah.
This is obviously pre-partition. And when he was little, his family then moved to Dhariwal, where his dad was a headmaster of a high school, right?
Okay.
So my dad is Hindu by his birth and his culture. And my mother is from New York. She was French English by her descent. So I was born to the two of them who are both IBM engineers. They met at IBM, right?
Got it.
And introduced by their good friend Siddharth, another Indian engineer. Right? So my parents met and they had me. And when I was little, we lived in Northern Virginia. And my birth name is Satish.
Satish, got it.
Yes. And when I was, 7, 8 years old, when you've had to go to school and tell everybody your name and no one pronounces it right, or you get made fun of your name, or you go to fill out forms and the woman thinks you misfilled out the form because you didn't spell the name that she knew, right? Things like that. My mom came to me and my brother when my brother was 4, Anel, and me, 8. And she said, would it be easier for the two of you if you had an American name in this country, but in India, you can use your real birth name? And we both were like, absolutely. That would make so many things easier. He lets us do that. So my mom said this, which I'm the only one in my friend group that had this opportunity. My mom said, then choose your new name. Right. My 8-year-old brain said, wow, there's this opportunity to choose a new name, but I want to keep my identity. And my identity is in my initials, SP.
Wow.
So I chose Steven because I thought it somehow maintained the purity of my identity, but gave me a way of existing in Virginia where no one asked me, how do you spell Steven? Everyone knows how to spell Steven.
Yeah. Isn't this fascinating, Steven, Satish, Satish, Steven, Satish? Isn't it fascinating? Yeah. So let me call you SP.
Okay.
Right. So SP, here is a question. For an 8-year-old, it's quite fascinating that he's thought about identity, that I would like to keep my identity intact.
And I would love to say that at 8 years old, I would have articulated that thought that way, but I would not have. 8 years old, you just think like, oh, well, I am SP. Like I write my initials, they're SP. I should keep that. And I think maybe that's the beginning of that journey, which I'm still on, which many of us are still on, of finding my identity. Like, what is my Dharma? How do I execute that in this lifetime? How do I fit in? What is my relationship to others? And for me, that is my identity that I've found as an adult. But someday maybe I go back to Satish. I think it would be great. Whenever it's not professionally confusing, where people are like, "What happened to Steven? Did he die?"
Why am I asking you this question, Steve? Because very often I come across people who get stuck with their names. If somebody's calling or pronouncing their name incorrectly, they take it personally without realizing that it's just the name. That's how I look at my life. People call me Saurav, people call me Rahul very, very often. You spoke about Dharma as well, right? Now, where do you find the convergence of Dharma, name, identity?
Well, I would like to say that I am a guru who has been spending much time in a cave high in the Himalayas, but I'm not. So I'll give you my opinion, which is no more valuable than anyone's. My opinion is that when we actually find self-fulfillment, we find those moments of happiness, whether that is hitting the perfect serve and realizing that you are meant to be this great tennis player, whether that is leading a group of people through the Amazon to find, some rare species, whether that is, going to space and helping people establish a colony on Mars or something. Like, when you have that moment and you feel sukha, you feel that happiness that comes from self-fulfillment, it's usually a very good guide that as you've been searching for your Dharma, you're close to that. Like, you've been digging around and you're close to the gold. So that I know is my process for learning what I'm meant to do.
And I'm not surprised that I'm having this conversation with you, because last 4 days I've been indulging in conversations around fulfillment, around happiness. And we have been talking that how at the end of the day, we are only looking for happiness, peace, contentment, stillness, wholenessness within ourselves. And the ironical part is, the incidental part is, the good part is that we can only find, as you said, sukha, happiness, wholeness, fulfillment only within. And yet people are searching outside. Why? What is it that there is fundamentally wrong in the culture that we are a part of?
It's a pretty complex question, but I'll give you the simplistic answer that my two brain cells have for you, okay? So I do think that when we find our happiness may involve action that is exterior to ourselves, Like, you may look at someone who works in a soup kitchen and has been sacrificing a lot of personal luxury in order to be there for people in that soup kitchen. But that expression, that action that they take towards others may give them inside the feeling of happiness or self-fulfillment. Like, I'm doing something that's meaningful with my life. I have X number of hours before this is over. This is how I do it. But I think the dark side of what you're saying is there are a lot of very smart behavioral economists and designers that know how to elicit, neurochemical responses that feel like happiness. The whole, like Nir Eyal wrote a wonderful set of books on Hooked, on how these people are trained to release dopamine in us that make us addicted to dopamine, like it's cocaine or something, right? And it feels like happiness. It feels like checking your post to see, did you get one more like, or someone repost your reshare of your photo from the thing? Feels happiness. It may be like a fake sign of the facade of happiness, but no real happiness behind it.
And the world that we are living in, Stephen, it's moving in a direction where we are always chasing numbers, be it the number of likes, be it the number of reposts, be it the number of appreciation that we are getting from people, be it the materialistic wealth that we are looking forward to create for ourselves, or maybe for our families and the society that we are a part of. And yet the burnout rates are increasing, and it's alarming.
Yeah. So I know we're live streaming this and I'm watching to see how many likes we get on TikTok right now. And if we don't get to 10,000 likes, I'm just going to leave halfway through the podcast. I'm just going to go because I need 10,000 likes to be happy. Right? And some reshares. I need some good reshares.
Yeah.
Now, all kidding aside, what you're touching upon is obviously very close to my heart because I've been looking around this area about this thing of burnout a lot. And what is it? And in some way, if we understand it, can we help with it? And there's so many people like you know, who are helping people understand their burnout, their stress, and then how to solve it, how to find ways to deal with it. Because I'll be honest, there is a certain amount of pressure in life that helps propel you forward. If you just sat on the sofa all day with $1 billion in the bank, no goals, you wouldn't be happy, right? Right? There's a certain sense of like, I want to do something meaningful that gives you a happiness. So it's not to say that burnout is the relief from all stress, from all pressure. It is just lying there inert, fully fed, fully, enough wealth to exist and all that. But if we acknowledge that there is a certain healthy amount of stress, there's a healthy amount of pressure, that it is not, we are all the Buddha. We are not completely detached from all sense of belonging and all attachment, right? We actually are humans. Like we may care very much about our children. We may not want to say, well, I'm detached from their health or their success. That is attachment. And from attachment comes suffering, right? So I'm not saying that everyone needs to be Buddha under a Bodhi tree. I'm saying rather, if we find that the important stresses in our life and allow them to move forward, that can bring you joy to attend your son's soccer game or to help your daughter with her math homework, and you can extrapolate from that many other scenarios. But when you go into the work situation, which is very often where people are like, I'm burned out on work. I can't do this. This is terrible, right? If you seek out something that speaks to you the same way, like being proud of your son when he hits the home run or being proud of your daughter when she writes a great bit of code, those things in your work, if you're in alignment, can be very powerful. I happen to be very lucky to work with people who have contributed to the platform that we created. And a lot of them did it because they believed. Some did it with literally no compensation. They just said, I would love to build this feature. And that's amazing that they felt that gave them enough happiness. They didn't need money. They didn't need stock. They just said, I see what this mission is and I believe in it. And if we can aspire to that, and it's not possible at all times. There's sometimes you have to do part of the job. Like I had to do our corporate taxes last month. It was awful. It was so many pages of reading tax codes in the United States. It was terrible, but I did it, and then I get to have podcasts with you and talk about important things.
Yeah. And is that what you talk about? Healthy amount of stress. Is that what you say when you're able to manage two sides of the story really well? As much as you are aware that you are attached, but at the same time, you are attached because you would like to give a healthy, happy life to your children. Is my understanding right?
Completely. The way I would say it, and this was said to me when I was young, happiness is not about having no problems. Happiness is about choosing the set of problems you want to have. Do I want to worry about my children's welfare? Yes.
Yes.
I choose to have children, and I choose to say that comes with a set of problems around making sure they don't run into the street. And when they do fall down the stairs, that I have to take them to the hospital or whatever happens. But when you accept this is the set of problems I want to have, you can find happiness.
Yeah. Stephen, help me understand, what is it at the fundamental level that could be a possible reason for the burnouts that we have been talking about in the world? Is it the burnout because people have unfair expectations from themselves, or they are chasing an illusion for themselves, or there is something in the environment that they are operating in, both inside and externally, or any kind of mindset that they are operating in, which is not supporting them and yet causing burnout?
Your question has embedded inside it most of the answer. And I want to acknowledge that. That was a very smart way of phrasing the question. Let me say there are two things, and one of them I can talk more about. The other one is going to be obvious on its face, and I don't think anyone needs to hear me talk about it, right? The easy answer is we have a culture now where we're continually presented with here's what you should want, right? It is more easy and quicker in a society than any other society. And every society has had, I look up to someone who's faster, better, wealthier, better looking, whatever. Right? We've always had that. But now with the rise of social media, it has never been easier for people to say, well, you should be like me, right? So the funny thing is you have this whole generation of people who are influencers, influential, most of whom make up garbage. These are the people who are telling you how to become a billionaire, and they go and they stand in front of someone else's Lamborghini in a parking lot and take a photo like it's their Lamborghini and tell you their get rich quick scheme, or tell you go buy laundromats, or here's how I made $50 billion overnight. And most of it's garbage. But the thing is, the fact that that information is propagated so easily now, it gives people this great gap between where I am and where my expectations should be, right? This idea of like mimetics. I need to be this and mimic these other people. When in reality, most of these other people are frauds, right? But they know they get clicks and views by saying, this is how I made $50 million owning laundromats or some garbage, right? So that gap is bad. Everyone's talked about that. I'm not going to say anything smarter than anyone about it, right? However, I will tell you this. I firmly believe that one of the effects of the pandemic that people have not solved yet is that we're human and we are social creatures. And by social creatures, I don't mean we're all extroverts. Many of us do like to be quiet. Many of us like to think alone. But ultimately, no man is an island. No person is an island. And this is something I noticed happen. Many of us have to work. You do, I do. We're not independently wealthy. At some point, we have to say, to have the things that I want, I have to go trade my hours or my brain for value, right? For something to buy food and shelter. So in the course of the pandemic, when suddenly the world changed, right? It's one of those seismic shifts. If you think about the history of the office, where we go to make money, right? Where we go to get value. 100 years ago, the office was the farm, right? And your boss was your dad, right? Then steam engine, the factory was the office, then the computer, and the office was the office. You would go to a tall building with lots of computers in it, and everyone would work there. And then with the pandemic, the office became everywhere. Like, as you've probably seen the last Gallup poll of knowledge workers. In other words, not people who are like working in a factory or restaurant service, but people who work with knowledge. Over 80% are now hybrid or remote, right? So the office is everywhere. Now think about the tool set that went along with the office, right? When you were on the farm, the tool set was, the rake and the shovel and stuff like that. When you went to the factory, you didn't bring a rake with you. You got a new tool set. You got, here's a screwdriver and a wrench, right? Then you went to the office and you were given a new tool. Here's this computer. And with this last change, the tool set didn't evolve. There was not something given to you to say, here's how to make this new world work in this new office. And I think there's a gap. Everyone has Zoom fatigue. If you look at this spectrum of interaction, there is like this Zoom calls that are synchronous, in your face, require a lot of attention, a lot of brain power. They tire you out doing too many, right? The other end of the spectrum, there's the really low emotion, asynchronous, like chat message or Slack message, where it's like, okay, whatever, someone sends it 5 hours later, someone else reads it, right? That middle area is what makes us human. That middle area is my walking into the office on a Tuesday morning at 8 a.m., seeing you and just nodding my head and being like, hey, what's up? Walking by the lunchroom and asking, how your kid did this weekend. That's gone. When you sit at home every day working, the human part is gone.
I think the connection part is gone.
Yes.
And that's one of the basic desires of a human soul. We love to connect with others and ask how are they doing and share what's happening in my life.
And even just see each other. Like, I used to work, in studio where it's like you would go in and as you're working, you would see other people doing. I used to go to a coffee shop when I was working with screenwriters. I would go to a coffee shop and it's not like everyone in there talked all the time. No, a lot of people are writing screenplays. But you could look up and see around you a whole group of people trying to do something great, working away, and you felt like you belonged. And that feeling of connection, like you're saying, is powerful and it energizes you. And when you ask me about burnout, what I tell you back is when you are around a group of people who are supporting you and you're supporting them, you're trying to do something, burnout goes away. It's when you feel alone and you're grinding away alone without connection that you're like, I can't do this anymore.
Since we are talking about burnouts, and as you are saying that the boundaries are getting merged with each other. So there's no demarcation. There's no time where we can meet people and build connections because every time, everywhere, we are carrying that work.
Yeah. Even in a low lift kind of way.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to be this synchronous conversation, but just that feeling of like, I belong to this community. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Which is missing, right? And that is leading to burnout. Steven, you run an organization called the Sukha Company. So if you just tell our audience, what is this organization called the Sukha Company and why do you call it Sukha before I take the next step?
I would love to talk about that because anyone who has to work on their computer and has experienced the feeling of, I feel isolated or I don't feel motivated, I feel disconnected, we built this for them. And as I was discovering what this was, I realized this is why we made it. And I'll tell you a funny story. So, you know, I got married last year and we had built the bones of this platform. And I asked my wife, I said, you know what, on our honeymoon, I know this sounds crazy, but no one's going to be bugging me because everyone's like, oh, you know, Steven's on his honeymoon, leave him alone, right? So it's going to be quiet, which it normally isn't when you're running a company. I said, I want to take a couple moments of quiet. And some of our top members of this little small thing we were building, right? We had some early members. I said, I just want to talk to them each for like 5 minutes and say, hey, listen, when I'm done with my honeymoon, I would love to market the most important feature of what we built. Can you tell me what it is? Because you know, I work inside the company. It's hard for me to see, right? So I spoke to a bunch of people and I expected, and I was wrong, everyone would say, oh, you know what? It's this feature. It's the killer feature they always talk about in marketing, like market this feature. Interesting is the answers were all over the place, different features. I love this. I love the music. I love that. So I started asking them, well, then tell me, why do you use this? Because I get all these different answers about different features that people love the most. Everyone said the same thing. Everyone said, I use this because at 3 p.m, I feel great. What does that mean? Well, I have a choice in the morning. When I open this, I'm more focused. I feel connected to other people. And you know what? When I'm done at 3, I have time to think about like, what are my kids doing tonight? Or am I going to play pickleball? Or, you know, what am I going to do? As opposed to I look up at 3, I'm like, wow, where did the day go? I'm not going to get this done today. And that's when I thought, I was talking to Laura one night, my wife, and I said, I don't think the company is necessarily about productivity, about focus. I think that is an effect of the company. I think what the company is about, it's about self-fulfillment. It's about happiness. And we do a lot of yoga. Laura and I met in yoga. I married the girl on the mat next to me in yoga, right? So obviously there are a lot of Sanskrit words that are part of our life. And Sukha seemed like the closest word to this idea of, you know what we actually do here? We give you a chance to be happy, to be self-fulfilled. And that may manifest as, oh, I got my work done. Oh, I feel focused. I wrote my book. Oh, I finished things. Those are manifestations of that. But the bedrock of that is when you feel you are doing the thing that you are meant to do, you are in your lane, you are executing your Dharma, and you get it done, that is indescribable. And that's what we do.
Steven, I'm sorry, I'm going back to the same question. How do you find Dharma?
Sure. It's a wonderful question. And I will give you the wisest answer that I can, but others will have smarter answers. So I will tell you that I have found in my life and in the life of some close friends, that it is usually not by directly pursuing the manifestation. It is usually not by saying, oh, I want to be rich, therefore I must go and do this job and and suddenly I found my Dharma. It's usually not from saying the manifestation of the happiness is this, therefore let me go after that. But it's rather saying, what are the things that make me happy? And how can I do them in such a way that it enriches the world around me?
Wow.
And that beautiful radiation of positivity into the world around you reflects back to you, you know?
Wow. Let's shift the gears.
Okay.
In the organization, you have spoken about, we are not only in the business of enhancing productivity. We are not in the business of focus. We are in the space where people can live a fulfilled life. And the closest word that you could find is Sukh. I personally believe, and in fact, only in the last 1 week, I've been deliberating on that if I don't consider myself as successful, accomplished, it's not because I don't have the resources or I lack expertise or I lack the people that I can reach out to. I think I've not been able to accomplish what I thought that I would want to accomplish. It's because of the distractions that I have. What do you think is the connection between distractions and productivity?
Yes. So there is a fantastic book written by Nir Eyal called Indistractable. And in it, he talks again in a very intelligent way around this idea of, as we develop as people, we have internal triggers and external triggers. And once you can acknowledge to yourself what those triggers are, you will start to see your behavior. It is like your world becomes color where it used to be black and white. And some of those manifestations are like, oh, I have to do this thing, but I'm going to run to the fridge and get a drink of water first. Oh, I need to go check the laundry. Oh, I need to do this one other little job before I do the big job, right? And you procrastinate. And these distractions are obvious. The picking up TikTok, like for me, my phone is the source of my distractions. Like when I'm on my laptop, I'm pretty good. But as soon as I pick up my phone, my friends are all in WhatsApp around the world. And then you want to reply to a couple of people who say something. That is the first step to understanding distraction, because then you start to say, oh, you know what? Getting that glass of water, checking my WhatsApp, these are actually just procrastinations because I'm triggered internally about the thing that I need to do. Why is the thing I need to do hard? Sometimes it is you don't know where to start. Sometimes it's like, well, I know I need to do my taxes, but oh my God, do I need to read the tax code first? Do I need to get forms first? You have a lot of great people who have written about how to begin, right? Because once you begin, the momentum is there. And I have a strong belief that when you're around other people who are working, it is a motivation boost because you see them and it's inspiring and they see you. People want to read about the Hawthorne effect, the coffee shop effect. You know, there is a noticeable productivity boost you get by being able to see people working and know that you are seen. And that helps with distractions because when you are like on camera, when you're working, you know, even in a group like co-working, you don't want to be seen as the one who's just like on his phone all the time or running to the bathroom every 10 minutes, right? You actually put your head down and get stuff done. So that relationship between distraction and productivity, we built into our platform, probably because I get distracted by my phone, the ability to, with one button, connect your phone. And our platform, you know, this happiness, the Sukha Company, when you pick up your phone, you're working, you have a little coach in the platform, a little AI coach that'll say, hey, Steven, do you really need to check your WhatsApp right now? You know, or maybe you should let your phone charge right now. And it's just that little nudge to say, you know what? If I stay on what I'm doing now, it'll be done sooner, it'll be done better, and I will be happier with myself.
Yeah.
And that is how we want to help you.
Steven, with the influx of so many productivity tools that we have, we just continue to add to new apps and new tools on our screen.
Yeah.
And then we are saying that mobile is becoming a distraction.
Yeah.
Is it a dichotomy or?
I will tell you this. I have
sense.
a very outlier opinion on this, which is I find so many of these productivity tools, the task managers, to-do lists, they are procrastination apps.
Mm.
I am a big believer that all you need is you need a to-do list and you need the ability to focus. You don't
That's
need
it.
17 different ways of making Kanban boards and then shuffling things around and looking at them in a calendar and then looking at another view and doing like a flow graph. I'm a big believer that productivity comes from simply saying, I today have to do these 5 things, and I'm going to do them in the order where the most important thing is first. Like the Mark Twain quote about eat the frog. Eat the frog first thing in the morning. When you look at your list, don't make it the 5th thing. Eat the frog, because the momentum of doing that carries you through. And that is all you need. I look at most of these apps and they seem like they sell you an idea that you're being productive, but you're not. You're just shuffling around your task list.
So, Stephen, what are the different ways that could help us to keep us laser focused? If there are some ways that you share with your audience through your company.
I will give you the technique that we promote very heavily, which is every morning, write out the 3 things you absolutely want to get done. And if you have 2 stretch goals, suppose you're like, if I do these 3, I'll do in 4 and 5, right? But you're not going to beat yourself up if you don't get to 4 and 5, but you're going to get 1 through 3 done. Write them down, have them in your computer, wherever you need. So it is very clear, I need to do these things, and simply execute on them. We have a platform that helps you do that. It's beautiful music while you work. It blocks your distractions, is a beautiful place to work. But whatever works for you, whether it's a Sukha, whether it's something else, that is all you need. So that is what we offer.
Yeah. Stephen, in your experience, what is the connection between, and now I'm talking about people who are extraordinary performers, people who are artists. Last week, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine. His name is Dr. Gary. And he said that just because you have skills does not make you an artist. And these are those people who know how to tap into flow.
Mm-hmm.
So on one hand, we are talking about flow. On the other hand, I'm still struggling with dealing with distractions in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any magical wand that you have that will help me to deal with this distraction and step into flow in my life?
Well, you bring up a very important concept, which people, I think, are becoming more aware of. 5 years ago is not as popular, which is that concept of a flow state. And as you know, but let me just say it for your audience, if you're not familiar with this, there is a fantastic book on flow, where it was named Flow, by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. It's Hungarian-American, behavioralist. And he wrote about this state that he saw in high performers, where time almost doesn't exist, like distractions don't exist. Like there is such an intense focus on what you're doing that he named it flow, because it almost feels like there is a river in nature that is propelling you forward. Like you are with a current that is going towards your goal. And he said this is true whether you're talking about athletes, when I think there's that great Michael Jordan quote where he says, when I'm in that state, or I'm in the zone, there is nothing but me and the ball. Like there are no opponents. There's no, coach on the side. There's no people in the stands. He gets that state where it's me and the ball, right? Or you talk about Picasso staying up all night, creating Guernica or whatever, and forgetting to go to the bathroom because there was nothing. It was just him and the thing. And to be in that state of connection with your task is amazing. And there are some constituent parts. Like there have been so many people who have studied this now that there are a set of things you can do to help yourself get into flow. And if you've ever had that experience of like looking up after 2 or 3 hours and saying, wow, I did my entire day's worth of work in these 2 or 3 hours, and you didn't get up to make a sandwich, and you didn't check your WhatsApp, you were in flow. And that is a beautiful state to be in. And we write a lot about that on our blog. So flow states we encourage, even if you don't know what they are, you may know that feeling.
Yeah. And the 3 words that I just picked up from this conversation, one is no distractions, laser sharp focus, and a sense of timelessness.
Right.
Tell me about what is timelessness.
It is that state when you just stop looking at the clock. You stop going, how many minutes until lunch or how many minutes until, my next meeting? And rather, you are so enjoying and engaged in the task that there is no time,
Mm.
you know? And it's interesting. This is a little aside, but maybe an interesting one. There was a group of Harvard psychologists. This is probably like 34 years ago now, where they went to Australia, these three guys, because they had heard about this Aboriginal culture that had a very different relationship to time. Sort of like we talk here about in flow, like time doesn't exist. It's just you and the task. So they had heard about this culture where they're often used as trekkers in the outback that referred to dream time. That seemed to be disconnected from the time that you and I are having right now in this podcast and the listeners and the watchers are having. And so they went and they encountered them. They found a translator. They found an interpreter. And they went to this tribe and they said, we hear you guys are amazing, trekkers. You're great in the nature. And that you exist in this other state called dream time. And, the Aborigines essentially said, yes, what would you like? So they said, we would love to understand, how do you do this? You seem to have this ability to go before the animals do to where the animals will be. So we want to do a test. And this is what the Harvard guys did. This is so Western, okay? You're going to love this. So they have the guy that the Aborigines say is the best trekker. And two of the psychologists sit with him. And the third Harvard guy goes and runs this crazy course where he goes out in the outback, runs a certain number of times around a rock, runs a certain number of times backwards, goes into a stream, goes upstream, downstream, comes out the other side, does something, right? Comes back, and they say, well, now will you show us how you would trek him? Like, suppose he were an animal you were going to trek. And the Aborigine takes something of his and just goes off running, not like sort of looking at the ground, just takes off running. And as you know where the story's going, runs around the rock 3 times, twice backwards, goes into the stream, upstream, further downstream, coming up. And they ask him, how did you do this? And he said, well, I'm just following him. They said, but he's here with us. Like, you can't be following. He's right here. He said, through the interpreter, he said, I'm just following. I'm just watching him and following him. And the Harvard guys get very Western, like focused on this. They're very upset. They're like, that's impossible. Like, to the interpreter, you can't be explaining this properly to them, or you don't understand what this guy's saying because the guy's not with him. And the interpreter finally says to them, listen, it's hard for me to translate into your language what they are saying because their concept of time is not like yours. He is literally saying that he is watching the guy in front of him because all time is one time. He is in a state of flow. All time
is one time.
Yeah, he's in a state of flow. He is connected. He has all time is one time. And he is just focused on the task you asked him. He is not thinking about, was the guy here an hour ago, 2 hours ago? Where did he put his foot? He's just following him because all time is one time. He said, that's the best I can explain in your English language.
Yeah. Steven, as much as a part of me would like to ask you this question, how to tap into flow. Yeah. But let me not ask that question. Let me rather leave it to our audience interpretation. That when was the last time you experienced that there was no distraction in the work that you were doing, where you found laser sharp focus in what you were up to and where you experienced a sense of timelessness in your life?
That is beautiful.
Steven, what is it that I've not asked you and you believe it's important for our audience to know?
That they are stronger than they think. Now, I think one of the things that I hear repeatedly in people that come to us and say, I need help with this. The one thing you have not asked me is that I want to share is that fundamentally you are stronger than you think. You decide every day with every action how strong you are. No one else tells you. So we're really here to support you.
Thank you, Satish. Thank you, Steven. Thank you, SB. It was an absolute delight having you here. Thank you so much for for your time, for sharing your wisdom, your experiences so generously with our audience. Shukran. And I look forward to having you again on this conversation sometime again.
I hope this was helpful. And I'm so happy to have been here. And thank you for listening and asking fantastic questions, understanding what we do.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye, everyone.